everyone, on this glorious Tuesday. Hope you were having a fantastic day. Welcome to App Builder Live. Today we've got an amazing show planned for you today. We have Surya from our product marketing team is going to come in a second and chat a little bit about App Builder and Adobe Commerce, and then we will have Alex jump in and do a presentation on Comwrap Reply and talk about Feed Generator, the application that he built for Adobe Commerce customers, and he'll break down what that is and how it works and go into the code, all that great stuff. So a couple of announcements first before I bring Surya in. We have let's see, let me pop this up here. We have Adobe Developers Live coming up on May 23rd. So if you are not yet registered for that, you can head over to developerevents.adobe.com and register for it. It is going to be focused mostly around, so if you're an AEM customer, it's going to be a brilliant 6 hours or so of content for you. We're talking about AEM headless, as well as our next-gen composability capabilities. So a lot of great content for you there on May 23rd. And then another one, May 18th, we've got another App Builder Live, and I'll mention this at the end as well, on advanced deployment and scaling considerations. So that's on May 18th with my buddy Kelvin. All right, let's get into it, and let me bring Surya up on stage. Hey, man, how's it going?
Hey, Ron. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone, for attending. My name is Surya Lamek. I'm part of our Commerce product marketing team. I'd like to take a couple of minutes of your time before handing it over to Alex to share a little bit about Adobe Commerce platform strategy and the specific challenges we are aiming to solve. So if you look at commerce today, it's becoming more and more complex, increasingly complex, because businesses are trying to manage shopping experience across their digital presence as well as their physical stores. They need to do it across their own digital channels, like, say, their web store or native app, as well as third-party channels like, say, social or marketplaces and so on. And this presents quite a few challenges, especially when you're trying to provide a cohesive journey for your customers across every interaction that you have with them. The first is launching new capabilities. So that often involves bringing in new services. So as you adopt new services for things like, say, pricing, analytics, personalization, order management, and so on, introducing those new services and sometimes having to replace those services as you upgrade your ecosystem becomes very challenging. It requires a lot of development and it's time consuming. Sharing data across ecosystems is hard as well. So as you bring in more and more services, in order to build that 360 view of your customer, you need to bring together the data from all the different services that power your storefront. And without any standard for data exchange, that becomes quite challenges for our customers to basically implement. And once you're done solving those first two challenges, which is bringing in the services you want and sharing data across them, it doesn't stop there, because now you have to maintain all those custom capabilities that you might have built, those custom UIs, storefronts, all those integrations for synchronizing data, for real-time sharing of events, and so on. That's not easy to maintain over time and increases the cost for our customers. And that's essentially what we're trying to solve with our Adobe Commerce platform strategy. Now, key to that strategy is Adobe Developer App Builder. Now, App Builder is actually available for multiple Adobe products, including AEM, as Ron mentioned earlier. But today, I'm focusing primarily on what it does for commerce. Starting with with enabling our developers to integrate new services. So as you have more services that are either for backend integrations or for storefront integrations, providing the capabilities for you to easily integrate those with Adobe Commerce. Second, extend native capabilities. So whether you want to change how pricing rules behave in the system or how your cart behaves, etc., extending those native capabilities very, very easily and in an easily maintainable way as well is important. And Adobe Developer App Builder solves for that too. The third is building apps. So you can build completely custom apps on a serverless platform using events, API, and so on, all natively integrated with Adobe Commerce. And finally, running those apps. So Adobe Commerce provides, App Builder provides a cloud native environment that provides you with all the infrastructure, whether that's CDN, storage, and so on, for you to be able to host and run those custom apps that you might want to build. So if we look at broad themes, there are three essential focus areas for App Builder for Adobe Commerce. The first is around back office integrations, and these are very common for commerce. So whether that's a PIM system, ERP, order management, or so on, integrating those is probably one of the key needs for our customers. And primarily those integrations include synchronizing data, either in batch using our high throughput API or using events when something happens. As an example, you might have products sitting in a PIM and you want to batch load them into the Adobe Commerce system. On the other hand, you might have orders getting created in Adobe Commerce, and based on events or in a real-time manner, you may want to push those events to your order management system or to your ERP system. So App Builder provides you with the tools to be able to build those back office integrations. The second is composable shopping experiences. So as you add new services for the storefront, those could be things like real-time pricing, inventory checks, content, assets, reviews, ratings, and so on. So as you need to add these services, often you need to refactor code within the storefront to be able to make use of these services. So we provide you with an API orchestration layer called the API mesh, and that enables you to easily add these services, extend the API that those services provide, and plug them into your storefront, and even remove those services with minimal development or refactoring of your storefront code. So we can easily add and remove those services, and then add security, access control, and extensibility to those services right at the API mesh without having to customize either those backend services or the storefront itself. And finally, even with all of these services, third-party services, Adobe services, back office systems, customers often have unique or bespoke needs that they need to implement. And App Builder provides you with a serverless environment where you can build those custom microservices or single-page apps. These could be single-page apps that extend the admin experiences. So if you want to provide your business users with more, with certain custom capabilities to administer the system, you can build those single-page apps for that, or even build out custom services and microservices. And we provide you with all of the developer tooling, UI components that you can easily leverage, as well as CI/CD and all of the runtime services that you might need. Now, Alex is going to be talking about the microservice development, events, and so on in much more detail, so I'm not going to get into that. But before I hand it over to Alex, I'd like to give you a quick update, and that is that we are opening up third-party apps on the Commerce Marketplace very, very soon. So starting Q3, apps will be available to be listed for our customers to discover and install in App Builder for them to use. All of these apps will go through our quality process. So it's a comprehensive review of everything, including scale, security, performance, quality, etc. And we're opening up submissions for those apps from our ISV partners and solution partners at the end of May. So please look out for that updates on that. And if you are building an app using App Builder, feel free to start the submission process.
All right. That is fantastic. Super exciting news about the marketplace. Very cool. All right. Thank you, Surya. Let me take your slides off, and let's introduce Alex up on screen. Hey, man. How you doing?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for inviting.
What's that?
Thanks for invitation today. I mean, after coming back from vacation, that's a great start of the working routine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a little jarring. Well, for me, anyways, and Surya probably to less extent since you're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast, and it's a little early here. And we didn't have we had a day off yesterday, which I guess you did too.
Yes, same here.
Yeah. So this is our Monday. So thank you for joining us on our Monday.
Always
and yeah, so you've been with Comwrap Reply for a while.
8 years already. Yeah, I guess I already stopped counting. That makes no sense anymore.
Yeah, excellent. And you know, I was looking through some of the old stuff that we had when we were in beta, and I guess you had written a blog like a couple of years ago when we were in beta about using App Builder.
Yeah, I mean, we started our journey with Firefly, which now we use for another tool.
Which now is a different thing, but definitely check out Firefly from Adobe. But yes, for App Builder, yeah.
Now it's a builder. And yeah, that was our first tries because that's some area where we want to go, like in which direction we want to go. As we're working with Adobe Commerce or all 10 years, Magento for like 12, 13 years already. Yeah, that's and we had a great experience with that one, and that's why I'm here. So I want to share it and tell what we've done in last years.
Okay, that is fantastic. Well, without further ado, I will let you go ahead and share your slides, and I will drop. Oh, there they are. I will drop us out of it and hand it over to you. Take it away, Alex.
Thanks a lot. So yeah, hello everybody, and today I want to share our experience in working with a builder, and it'll be more detailed to creating the out-of-process service for Adobe Commerce by using a builder. And first, what I want to start from explaining the problem we had and why we came to this one, and then you will see which module we built and why and how. So first of all is a problem, and initially it was not a problem, it was a requirement which came from one of our projects. An original requirement is that we have to be able to generate the product feeds out of Adobe Commerce in XML and CSV formats, and they have to be exported to different systems. So in our case, it was the Google Shopping, Facebook Marketplace, and then to different ERP systems which expected the product data to be exported. Then we started with Adobe Commerce 245. We had approximately 50K simple products, so not so big shop and quite basic ones. And we started with clean system. So let's say it was our first task on which we started working on. And the most obvious solution for us, it was to search for available Adobe Commerce extensions on the marketplace. And we did it. So by just searching the feed manager, there was like 1,385 results. Not all of them are really doing the feeds, but like really a lot of them. And as we already saw that it can be resource-consuming operations, we decided to get several of them, not just stick to one. So we choose most best rated and most used one from, let's say, most trusted vendors, install them and played around. And originally it looks good. So also one of the most requirements was that we don't want to, let's say, have different modules or configure them somehow on a code level to have a different feeds because we need the different formats, but to use rather the one extension. And quite a lot of modules are out of box supporting this feature. And then after some time on working with extensions, so while the system started to work after the full configuration, we mentioned that it's become laggy. So we started to receive the new relic reports. The front end also had an issues. And we've been quite surprised by the reason we have a clean system, which only this module being installed. It can be also infrastructure problem, Adobe Commerce problem, but then when we went to the new relic reporting, we saw kind of this one. So we technically have huge amount of resources being used by periodical regeneration of the feeds, which happen during different period through the day, because each system has a different requirement. So if it's, let's say we have a Facebook and Google who is fine updated once a day, we have ERP system who want to receive updates as fast as possible. So the feed being updated several times per day. Also, quite critical requirement was that you can imagine that the products are being edited and changed during the day multiple times. And every time those modules are generating the feed, they take in the full, let's say, product information and regenerate it again and again. Even if there only, let's say, was 5-10 products being changed out of 50K products, there's still the feed regeneration happened. And then, okay, we thought, what can we do with this one? Because we even didn't start to develop any other feature of the system, which again will add additional load, depends on the customer requirements. So we thought about the possible solutions we can do here. So it's increase the server resources. So in this case, we will have much more resources to execute the operation. Means, yes, the whole server in general will be much faster and work much more stable. But it's lead to the additional costs we need to add there. Then we can refactor extensions and try to optimize it for our needs. So which basically lead us to the additional time and costs for development. And we're losing the support because technically every extension we develop in or we buy on marketplace is a support line. And if you are modifying it, then creating the support ticket, in most cases, the guys will tell you that, okay, we cannot help you because you modified the module. Then we can split generation in different batches, which basically, again, lead us to the modifying the module and have, again, given us situation that we or leading us to a situation that we have additional times and costs to be invested and losing the support. And the last one was to develop their own Adobe Commerce module, which was fine for our team. They're quite familiar. Yes, I mean, they're all Adobe Commerce developers. But again, are you sure that you will not hit the same problems yourself? And second one, that it will require, again, a lot of time, and then you have to maintain it yourself and all what is coming out of this one. So we thought about, okay, do we have any other solution for this one? And how about to build out a process service? And as a great introduction from Syria about a builder itself, which summarized like the main features and stuff which a builder given us, we thought about why cannot we use it? I mean, what it give us, what is our effort, and how we can proceed with it. So first of all, a very short recap about extensibility and why I always name it like out of process. So we have three possible ways to work on extensibility or extending the Adobe Commerce in process. It's where extensions are run as part of the host application. So that's the usual Adobe Commerce modules. And this provides better integration with the host application. However, it cannot reduce stability issues, and as you saw in your relic reporting I dropped you, it is. And I mean, currently that's, let's say, Adobe Commerce Magento standard way of extending before the builder era, let's say so. I hope it will stay like that. Then we have out of process, so that's when the modules or extension is separate. So they processed outside of the host application, that's what a builder is given to us. It provides much better isolation of the service. You have the own release cycles. You can maintain it. So you can choose technology on which is built one. And yeah, a builder is now on a stage for covering this functionality. I mean, but a builder basically not only option here. I mean, you can use any other microservices, landscapes to achieve this. And the last one is a hybrid, which is basically combine best of those two. And in some cases, you cannot only do it within process or out of process. Means you have to develop, let's say, the small Magento module, Adobe Commerce module, which changes or provides the additional APIs, which service can then communicate through. So it's basically require both sides of the process to be involved. You need Adobe Commerce developers, you need your application developers, depends on the language you developed it on. And it's currently already there. So live storage product records, they are built in a hybrid model. So you have to install live storage and product record extensions on the system. And at the same time, you have a service which communicate with them, or they communicate with the service to get or process the data. So we took those modules we have on marketplace, and then we decompose them on different elements which they using to achieve the goal. And okay, we thought each module modify the core code by one or another way. I mean, maybe the feed manager or feed generator is not so obvious way because it can be built more or less independent, so you just can read the data. But any other modules, in most cases, will modify the core. So you would need the plugins and observers of the core system to be able to do it. Let's say to get information about event fired, get product info if you're talking about the feed generation. Then we have a file system itself, so which allows us to store the feeds and save the files there. We have MySQL database to store the information about the feeds, storing the statuses, so all process information and data which required to get a feed as a result. Then we have the front-end elements, which is currently PWA, Luma, IAM front-end, any headless. I mean, okay, if you're talking the default, it's those three. And yeah, they are used for the admin area, for the front-end area, and that's again part of the core. We have a service contracts, which is technically the API. Just usually when you develop Adobe Commerce module, you're not calling API directly using the service contracts. And then you have a cron jobs, which allow you to execute tasks which you need on daily basis or basically periodically, it depends on your requirement. And then we took a builder itself, and we tried to realize if it's fit to us. And then we saw, okay, the plugin and observers can be replaced with Adobe I/O events. The file system can be replaced with Adobe I/O file storage library, so which allow us to have a private and public files be stored there. The database can be replaced with Adobe I/O key value storage. Yes, it's not relational database, but it still allows us to save enough data to process. The front end, we have Adobe React Spectrum, which provides us the front end possibilities to build a single page application. We have GraphQL Mesh, which give us the APIs, or basically which consume APIs to give us an APIs, let's say so. We have the scheduled task from OpenWhisk, which allow us to do the same stuff which cron jobs on default Adobe Commerce are doing. And that's how we created the feed generator. So that was, after all this resource, our conclusion was, yes, we can build a service out of Adobe Commerce, which will not impact the Adobe Commerce behavior. And let's go a bit more technical. So how it looks like currently. We have Adobe Commerce system, which provides us two APIs, which is a REST API and GraphQL. Yes, there is a SOAP also, but I hope I'll never work with this in the future again. But yeah, technically can be. But in our case, okay, we have REST API and GraphQL API. We have a builder, which allow us to create the template and to store them on key value storage. So on this point, we're fully independent from Adobe Commerce. Then we have GraphQL Mesh, which consume the REST API and GraphQL and provide a single entry point for our application, which is at this point already giving a huge benefit to us, because by using the GraphQL Mesh, which is configurable by JSON file, you already don't care which is staying on the left side of this Adobe GraphQL Mesh or on the right side, because they just can be replaced and still rely on the same GraphQL Mesh. We have actions to create and generate new feeds, and the sections are using GraphQL Mesh to receive the data. And then we have an action to generate the full feed. So we have, like, say, Invoker, which is adding event to Adobe I/O, and then the generate full feed action is doing the stuff which we technically need. And after feed has been generated, we placing it into the file system and provide a link as a result. Then we have OpenWhisk alarms, which can trigger the feed generation when we need it. So basically quite easy at this step. And we have events on Adobe Commerce for save different objects. I mean, first we talked about the product saving, but again, technically can be any. And if events been fired, then we can notify our application that something been changed. And the data been transferred then to Adobe I/O. So the product change, category change. If we theoretically want to build the customer export or block article export or whatever else, so the same stuff there, you can register events on what's happening with your objects, and this event will be published on Adobe I/O. Then we have our invoke feed update, which is picking up when event been fired, and then it's run the partial update. So that was a feature which been really necessary for our clients, that we don't want to regenerate the whole feed every time. So technically the product been changed, we just want to update this product information. And if we're talking about 50K product, which is quite a big file, so we can really just update one node within the XML or CSV when the product been updated. We also added additional key value validation there. So when the product update been fired, we save in the hash of this product. And then when it's fired the next time, if the hash was not really changed, then we're not doing anything. So we're trying to save resources as much as possible here to have as less operations as possible. Yeah, and then technically our feeds are ready. So we have 4 feeds. They can be exported to different systems. Yeah, public marketplaces, ERP, CRMs, and so on. And then what is the most lovable part of all this diagram is that technically you can replace Adobe Commerce system, or you can extend it. So let's say if you have ERP and CRM system which provide different APIs, which provide customer information, category information, product attributes, they can be all consumed by a GraphQL mesh, and this means you don't need to touch your Builder application at all. You can also have, and we had it on one example, or like on one real project example, where we have product data from Adobe Commerce, attributes coming from ERP system, and images coming from the DAM management system, which is allow us to, by using the GraphQL mesh, combine them all together again with a single entry point, and then we don't need to touch our App Builder application. So yeah, shortly about each of those elements, I showed it before. So we have Adobe I events, which I use for register new events for generating the feed, receiving events from Adobe Commerce about changes in different objects. And then, yeah, Adobe I events itself providing the mechanisms for retry failed transactions or receive information about what was wrong. So you can also debug if anything goes wrong here. Then we have Adobe I/O file storage library, which allows to save the files. And if you go on even more technical, just shortly info about how to use it. And it's like super easy. You technically just has write and you have read operations which we need. I mean, we can also use lists. So in case of you want to use files like persistent storage, maybe not for saving the files, but saving the data there. So yeah, you have operations to work with the file system, to list it, to receive the properties if necessary, which contains a bunch of the file properties, and delete file. So technically open API for managing all the stuff. You have a key value storage, which even more easier is just a get and put. So 2 options which have to be executed. You can also define the TTL for them, so they will be cleaned up automatically, so you have time to leave. And if you'll do -1, it will be unlimited lifetime. And we're using it for save list of the feeds, for save information about single feeds, and save the hashes about the updated projects. We had the small challenge on this point. And the reason was that, I mean, I used to work with Redis, for example. And in talking about the operation there, you can receive the list of the keys by using the patterns. So when you don't know the exact key name, to use the wildcard there. But it's not possible currently on I/O key value storage. So you need to know the key, which led to the situation that we need to store a list of the feeds separately from the list of the keys. So then we can match and build a nice grid, which I'll show you a bit later. And there are some limitations for sure. So I took this limitation from GitHub, as I know it was a bit aligned in the upper side, but I didn't find like any officials. So I didn't want to put information which I could not confirm by the sources. But yeah, we have max state value size to 2 megabytes, max state key size to 1024 bytes, and a total state size of 10 gigabytes, which is more than enough for our purpose. So yes, you don't want to rebuild the Adobe Commerce by using the builder. You build in the services for it. Then we have React Spectrum, which looks really nice. I'm sure most of you already saw it by working with live search or product record in Adobe Commerce backend. So yeah, React Spectrum providing the components which really do make our life easier to build the front-end application. Also separated, if you don't want to use React, you can use just the React CSS, which is also available there. But honestly, we tried it. It was even much harder than just use React Spectrum. And then we have Mesh. That's what I told you before. So the best part of all this, which is like an orchestrator of the APIs in the middle, which allow us to really easy maintain both of the systems in case of any changes in API layers. And that's an example of the mesh file we have. I'll explain you shortly why exactly we build it, but in this case it's merging the REST and GraphQL together from the Adobe Commerce system. Because yeah, we need to receive information which is not available by GraphQL. And in this case, that's one of the examples of this information. So we need to get the websites and a store view list to know for which store view generate the content as the language specific. And it's not a default endpoint in Adobe Commerce. So technically we merge them together, just go shortly back, and defining the services we want to use, like store group and website repositories, and those just become available on the GraphQL layer. And Mesh also accepting the authorization, so don't worry that they will be public. You need to have a token to get access to it. Yeah, and that's it. So technically we got rid of the REST connector which we had before in our extension. And we have a schedule tasks, which allow us to run periodically the task which I mentioned already before. And now let's shortly jump to the application itself. Hope you see my screen fine. You see the application fine. So that's what we ended up like after the, I guess, 2-3 weeks. It was of the development, but I would not say like active development. It was like a learning course because it was also new for us. And in this case, that's built with React Spectrum, this front-end part. And we can create the feeds out of there. So we are not on Magento side currently. Let's make some app builder awesome demo. And we currently supporting 3 types of the feeds, which are XML, JSON, and CSV. And this point, which I showed you already before. So a list of those stores being loaded on the fly from Adobe Commerce system by using the mesh. And then we define the header, footer, and the body of the feed itself. So if you're talking about the XML, we have, let's say, items, like a wrappers around, and then we just add in the repeatable elements. Let's say we need a name. And the nicest part of it, as you can see here, we have an auto-completion, and this auto-completion works in a manner that it's reading the GraphQL schema, in this case from the mesh, and giving to the end user list of the possible attributes they can use to create the feed. And also the filter, we work now on extendable filter, because now we just can define by type of the product we want to export. And what is nice part of this one, that you don't need to know your schema. If you add in then your attribute in Adobe Commerce backend and do it, let's say, filterable, it will appear on the schema here. So much more easier for the administrator of this module to know which tags are available. And there also the challenge we had with this one, because GraphQL schema is technically can be infinite, so it can have as many layers inside as it can be. Yes, because when you build in the elements, you can define an interface, which is an interface inside. And the main goal of GraphQL schema is to build as minimum request as like body request as possible to request as minimum data as possible, which leads us also to the situation we not always can easily parse the schema and get all possible options which are available out of there. So, but we're working on a nicely solution for this problem. And yeah, oh yeah, wrong one. So, and then we can technically regenerate the feed. It can also happen automatically by the cron jobs, but we don't want to wait. And then you see it's already done. So I mean, it's a demo store. There are just several products there, but yes, looks not very nice. So and that's it. So it's read the product information from the system, created for us the XML feed. Yeah. So looks quite easy on a first try. We can also make the JSON feed additionally, which will allow us to create the JSONs. Means technically you can. I would not call it an API, but it's technically can become an API in case if any other system consumes the JSON or calling the endpoints to receive the body, which is technically the REST API. And that's I will just do for sake of saving the time. We'll do it very, very simple. Yeah, and one point, that's what I mentioned before when I told about complexity of the GraphQL schema. So if we, let's say, search for description is just node and tag. Within the GraphQL, it contains a multiple layer inside. So it can have to be defined like that. Means theoretically may come to a situation that this amount of dots here and elements are quite unlimited. So we need have some logical, user-friendly way to have it limited. And yeah, that's our JSON feed, which generates quite fast. And as I'm already not anymore sharing my presentation, just very shortly, I will not really go through code that don't see a very big sense here. I mean, it's just a JavaScript, and if you have the JavaScript developers in your team, I would say they know what to do quite easily. There are not so many stuff you need to learn. It's technically we define the actions we want to have, and it's quite like in our case a lot of action I mentioned before for saving the feeds, which manipulates with the key value storages, for saving, deleting, or get. If you think about Adobe, it can be get, save, get all, get by your ID, and then regenerate processes, which technically trigger the generation. And if you have a look on the code structure, we have the front-end elements, which locates on web SRC folder, which manages the whole front-end manipulations. So the assets, React Spectrum components, call-in, and all the stuff. And then we have an actions. So technically, again, if there are Adobe Commerce developers here, so it's technically our controllers which have been fired, or service contracts with API layer that have been fired from outside. And yeah, we have this Adobe Commerce GraphQL connectors and REST connector, and as I showed you before, REST is not anymore needed as we switch fully to the mesh. So we have now mesh additionally, and that's a mesh file I showed you before. And after I just showed it to you, I realized now I need to replace my tokens. Nice, but that's okay. Yeah, and that's an GraphQL URL you get generated after you run the mesh. And yeah, you can receive the data out of Adobe Commerce by using the GraphQL, which is not available as a GraphQL there. And last one before I jump in back to the presentation, just really shortly wanted to show you the overview of the application itself. So we have a builder application available. So we have a nice interface for it. And it's looks quite massive after we started to use all available features there. We have API mesh connected. We have events, and currently we have 2 events registered. So it generates the product feed and save product on Magento. So events being fired every time when the product being saved on Adobe Commerce side. And technically, that's what I showed you. I mean, we just generated several feeds with you together. And if you go to the event that's been fired, you can see the whole execution of this webhook, which is in our case firing the action. And you can see when it was executed, what was the request parameters, what was payloads, and what was the response. So it's very fancy and very nice when you want to debug and to see what is going on with your application. You also have a retrying possibility. So if anything goes wrong, it will retry it automatically for you. Yeah, so let's jump to the presentation and what technically we've got. We have an app builder application, which allows us to generate the different feeds. And initial state was 50K products requesting all the data we need, and we have incremental updates there. And that's what we ended up with. So after some time of working with it, we checked the New Relic reporting, and it looked like following, just to remind how it was before. And that's New Relic on Adobe Commerce, so not on a builder. So this means that the resources that have been used, definitely still some resources being used because we're using the GraphQL connection there, but we get in only data we really need. So if you have a look on this example, by asking name, description, SKU, and image, we asking only name, description, SKU, and image. We're not asking any other data, which really remove the payload tremendously if you compare it to the default service contract usage. And the partial feed update is been possible by using the Adobe I/O events for Adobe Commerce. You can find it on App Builder pages. So it works in a manner that you connect Adobe Commerce to Adobe I/O by using this module, which is core module. So I would not call it like hybrid model. I still call it like out of process service, by the reason that's a core module of Adobe Commerce already. And then you just subscribe in on 2 events in the config PHP file. That's how it looks like on config layer. So you define an observer you want to be listened to, define which fields been exported. So you can tell which data you want to receive on Adobe I/O, because you definitely don't want to send all product data, especially if it's within images. And for our case, SKU is enough, because then we pull in product info by SKU. And all those events been landed to I/O and then being consumed by the app builder. That was a payload. So we have an SKU transferred there. So our system exactly know what to use. So what we ended up with, we had no Adobe Commerce code changes. We using fully clean Adobe Commerce system, and only APIs been consumed and all development happened on a builder. We have no infrastructural changes applied, so we stay with the same resources that have been provisioned by Adobe Commerce Cloud. Our model has a known release cycle, so we're not dependent on updates, because even if you check Adobe Commerce updates, they're not doing backward incompatible changes to API layer. Means allowing us just to keep our version, release our features without being dependent on Adobe Commerce too much. And if we somehow become dependent, we always have a mesh, which just by changing JSON file allow us to change the API. We have low impact on front-end application. I first wanted to write no impact, but it's not true. We still has an impact by the reason we're using the GraphQL, means a resource has been consumed, just not comparable with like default service contract execution. We're using only Adobe services in this case. So the whole application stay in a whole Adobe universe, which is under the license we have, which not lead to additional costs. I don't know, just if we will start to make millions and millions of operations per day, then maybe. It's all been maintained by Adobe itself. So we found quite a good decision here. Can be used other system, Adobe or Amazon AWS, for example, but then you need to already manage those services yourself. In this case, it's not our responsibility as Adobe Commerce team, which makes us happy. We don't really like to work with the DevOps. The source system can be easily replaced or extended. So as I mentioned already multiple times, I guess it's clear. Single feed generation point for all your applications. So you can technically connect multiple sources. So you can have multiple Adobe Commerce instances. And we have a bunch of clients which has multiple Adobe Commerce Cloud instances for the single project. And they all can have the single interface. Technically, you can also manage it in a way if you, let's say, Adobe Commerce Developers Agency, that you can aggregate all your clients there together if they don't require own access there. If they require own access there, that's already something you can still think of, but that was not our goal. And technically, you have no Adobe Commerce Developer required here. With the fun fact, the whole feed generator being created by only Adobe Commerce developers, it's also showing us the entry level, like the entry level, it's quite low. By the reason, yes, you need experienced developer, but it should not be too experienced to start work with this one. So we could use our Adobe Commerce developers team just to switch to Node, JavaScript, and create the module. And we're working on the second version here, which is integration feed generation with Adobe Commerce backend, which is already possible. So you can have the application I showed you before integrated in the admin area, so you don't need to have a separate URL. It just will be available on one of the menu items. We want to build a preview of the feed, so it's like look and feel, so client can directly see how the feed looks like, depends on the marketplace, for example. Will be harder in case of the ERP systems, but in case of the marketplace, it's possible. Adding support of another entities to be able to create the feeds for categories, pages, or any custom-related entities, because here we're dependent only on API layer, means you can just build the processors for different entities, and then all will stay the same. Have more statistic about generation, that's what we are currently fully missing, except the Adobe console interfaces, but we want to have our own statistic, and extending the filter attributes, which is prior one currently, then we can export technically any product, any data we want to. Yeah, that's shortly it. Thanks a lot. Thanks to my team who spent tough time on this one, because we originally prepared it for Adobe Commerce Rockstar in Las Vegas Summit. So we had some time pressure on this one. And that's why I escaped to vacation directly after. And when I came back, it still works, which is already a great sign. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach me on Twitter, Slack channel of Magento Open Source, or just visit our website. Thanks a lot.
That was great. Thank you so much, Alex. Brilliant example of using App Builder and Adobe Commerce to provide I think a unique and innovative service for your customers. And was the development using App Builder, right? You had looked at a bunch of different I guess alternatives, and then you landed on App Builder. How did you find developing on App Builder? I mean, it sounds like it was pretty straightforward.
I mean, yes, it was pretty straightforward currently. I mean, remember our talk in the beginning of this one when we started with App Builder like 2 years ago, when it was not so easy as now.
Right.
But honestly, staying together with the Builder development for last 2 years, see how fast it's developing. And it's from I'm not sure if I love it to I love it. It was the quite nice migration for us. So it was quite easy to start also for the team, and they really enjoyed it. So they enjoyed it to still work with Adobe Commerce, but try something new for themselves.
Yeah, it's great. And it was great for you to show like kind of the event payloads and the success, or the, the kind of the debugging within the developer console, and kind of all of you kind of went through a really great presentation for using App Builder. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to bring Surya up on stage here as well. So let's get into some questions. I think let's get into a question first on, does the transform logic all occur serverlessly? Are there cold start or timeout concerns? Definitely, since App Builder is, a foundational serverless solution, that's definitely a concern. Alex?
Yeah, correct. I mean, technically, everything happened in a builder. All logic we are building is being executed outside of Adobe Commerce system, which is technically great for us. I mean, as I showed you on some charts, it's had a great performance impact on the whole processes. We are quite relaxed currently. And for me, let's say hard to answer, for example, on the resources limit. We didn't hit any, but maybe Siri, you can give a bit more info about this one.
Hi. So yeah, I mean, I've actually heard Alex talk about his feed generator a couple of times, and as you mentioned, everything does have serverlessly. It does happen serverlessly, but you can set the timeouts on App Builder apps to meet your needs, depending on how often you expect the app to be invoked or the events. So you can mitigate some of that by configuring your timeouts for it.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's actually a great call out for our next App Builder live session on the 18th of May. We're going to go over scaling situations and how to build performant App Builder solutions, and what are the settings that you can tweak to make sure you can avoid kind of those cold start and reuse those containers as much as possible. So definitely we'll do a deep dive on that on the May 18th. We'll have the invite for that going out shortly. Okay. So one of the questions I wanted to address is how do you get access, right? So there's been a couple of questions on how do people get access to App Builder, and I'll start on this. So there's a trial that we have available for customers, and that is if you're not already on the, help me out, Surya, which version of Commerce do you get App Builder with again?
So if you have 244 or above, you can use App Builder with Adobe Commerce. So that's the minimum version for the events module that Alex mentioned. So you'd need to be on 244 and above to be able to use App Builder with it. As far as getting access, it depends on whether you're a partner or a customer. If you're a partner, you can email spphelp@adobe.com to get you started on provisioning that. If you're a customer, then you should speak with your account team, and they will be able to help you get access. But as Ron mentioned, there is a trial process. However, you need to make sure that you already have access to the admin console at Adobe. So if you go to admin console.adobe.com and see that you have access, then you can sign up for the trial process.
All right. Yeah. And if you need the trial, you can definitely go here to get access to App Builder. But as Surya mentioned, make sure that you have access to the admin console before joining, since when you get to this, it'll actually automatically check that your login has access. So either way. Okay, and then back to questions. We have another one from Jignesh. Are apps that are created, can they be used or sell to other clients like Marketplace? And
I can take that one. So we are opening up apps on the Adobe Commerce Marketplace. So you can start submitting by the end of May. We will be providing updates. If you're a partner, you'll see updates on the Solution Partner Portal, as well as on our social handles and other communication channels. So starting end of May, you can submit apps to be included on the marketplace. And then in Q3, we don't have a more exact date, but sometime in Q3, those apps will be listed for customers to be able to purchase.
That is fantastic. Super exciting. And the feed generator, Alex, that you had showed is not something that you're selling, but it's something that as a customer of Comwrap Reply that they would be able to leverage your services to use feed generator, correct?
Yes, correct. I mean, we're not planning currently to sell it for now. I mean, let's see what will change after the marketplace will appear, and after we will put it into the shape that we are happy to sell it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's some solution that we technically, for every customer that is coming in, we adopting and testing, which also give us the nice field for testing before we consider to sell it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Like incubate it internally and with, your customers, and then be able to make that more widely available. So do you think that Comwrap will be deploying, or rather developing, any new solutions with App Builder? Is this like a tool that you might go to again to provide other services for customers?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we already consider while having the kickoffs on new projects planning the features. If somebody would ask me, I would not say yes, do it always and develop the extension there. You always need to consider or to think about if it makes sense. There was like some nice phrase I heard some time ago that this microservice could be just one line of the code. But always think if it makes sense, if it's worth it to build. But in our case, anything which is involving big resources flow and resources consuming on main application, it definitely makes sense to move it away.
Yeah, definitely offloading those kind of heavy services into an out of process solution like App Builder is key. Okay.
Alex, I have a question for you. You've been with Adobe Commerce for quite a while, developing on Adobe Commerce and probably going through upgrades as well. What do you think the impact of building an App Builder is for upgrades with Commerce?
I mean, the App Builder itself is, in our case, our modules, they have independent release cycle, means we're not really dependent on Adobe Commerce updates. Since also we already survived, let's say, several versions of Adobe Commerce changes, where we're doing always the GraphQL schema changes and validation, and they're not changing the stuff which are usually backward incompatible change. Means which leading us to the situation that if Adobe Commerce has been updated, we do not really care. Yes, we always have a validation check, but it can be covered with usual automatic tests, and you don't need to spend the time on aligning your module. So which is technically the great impact for us. So I really hope that if you will switch to fully headless for such like a complex tasks, which are involving really resources, a lot of code development, then our updates will become much, much easier.
Right on. That's very cool. Okay, so we've got a question. Surya, again, this is probably for you as well. Is the license needed to use apps or only to create or / develop them?
Right. So App Builder essentially includes compute capacity. What that means is all of the runtime services. So compute capacity, EN, storage, key value pairs, everything that Alex was talking about, events, etc. App Builder includes a capacity with metrics of each one of those aspects. So you do need to license App Builder to run your apps. The number of apps you create, it doesn't really matter, but for those apps to run, they need capacity. And that's where, when you say license, I assume you mean like paying for it as such. So you do need capacity to run those apps. Now, all of our cloud customers get a certain amount of capacity included with their base license. So if you are on Adobe Commerce on cloud, then there's a certain amount of capacity that is available to you to use. If you require more capacity, then packs of App Builder are available for purchase.
All right, that's great. Yeah, so essentially, as a Adobe Commerce customer on cloud, you automatically get some capacity of App Builder, right? Some number of units or whatever of capacity. And so the customers that are using these applications that already have App Builder they're using their own capacity for like, say, if you were running feed generator, then that customer's App Builder allotment would be against the use of feed generator, right? I might have made it more confusing.
No, I think you explained that perfectly. So
okay, so say you're like a partner like Alex Comwrap, and they go to a customer and they deploy feed generator on that customer's installation of Adobe Commerce. App Builder's included in that customer's installation, so the usage count goes against that customer's license, not Comwrap's license. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And so Comwrap as a partner can develop and use it in the development. But yeah. Okay, we've got another question. We're ending here. We're actually over time. So, but let's throw this last one up here.
Yes, I will be happy to answer. Let me think how to answer. So yeah, I mean, in Adobe Commerce, you have two areas usually. You have backend, frontend. So the builder is generating, after deployment, generating the URL. So basically you can access it if you don't have, it can be, let's say, private actions or public actions. So if it's a public single page application, you can use it and be integrated like iframe on your system. If it's a private one, you already require the authorization process, which is also available. You can use OAuth mechanism to receive the token and to be authorized your actions. But in this case, you would require the authorization layer. And if you're talking about the Adobe Commerce backend itself, there is a module. If you have a look on the latest version, it's called Adobe EMS. Yes, I guess Adobe EMS something, which is part of the core, which is providing the mechanism already to use the admin area login to log in with Adobe. So EMS is identity management system of Adobe, and you can integrate those applications into the Adobe Commerce backend by using this login processes and using the EMS. So I would not say it's like easy to do it out of box, but you can do it. I mean, there are already modules for that. There are a public API available for the EMS integration, so you can obtain tokens. You can authorize users against Adobe logins, and yeah. But I would say in any case, it's a standalone application, and if you have an interface for it, it's have to be in most cases the iframe integration.
I will point out, to add to Alex, that in June we are releasing the back office SDK for App Builder, which means that you'll be able to more easily bring in single page apps into the admin console for Adobe Commerce, so inject them in there.
Awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah, more very cool stuff coming for App Builder. Okay, last one, and I know we're over time a minute or so, but this is maybe quick for Surya. If Adobe Commerce and all products except App Builder and those required for Feed Manager are removed, what's the Adobe licensing model? I guess if you're licensed for App Builder, then I think the impact is you could leverage App Builder to do something if you're not using Adobe Commerce, if I understand this correctly.
I am not sure if I understood this question correctly as well, but first of all, App Builder is available along with Adobe products, which means that you would get it either if you license Adobe Experience Manager, Experience Platform, or Adobe.
Right.
So when it's specifically with Adobe Commerce, the included capacity depends on your existing Commerce license. So as you know, Commerce is, if you're a Commerce customer or partner, you're familiar that Commerce is licensed based on the GMV tier the customer is in, and we provide App Builder capacity based on that. So of course, additional packs can be purchased if your requirements go beyond what the typical. And I hope that answers your question, but I'm not sure if I missed part of it.
Yeah, it was a tricky question. Sorry for throwing it up there. Anyways, okay. So thank you guys for joining us. Sorry we went over a couple minutes. Hope you found this valuable. And thank you, Alex and Surya, for joining me today. Fantastic presentation. Fantastic to share your skills and knowledge in all of this. Okay, and any questions, you can, anything we forgot, you can drop them to Alex's Twitter up there on the screen. And have an awesome day. And we'll see you again on May 18th for our next session of Adobe App Builder Live.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Alex.
See you guys.
Everyone.